Hi, and welcome back to the Coming of Sound, Color, and Censorship, Lecture 3, Part 3 of 4. We're going to talk about the pictures were always meant to be in color and what innovations were created that eventually guaranteed the success of color films. Well, we haven't seen any examples yet in this class, but we will now, and that is stencil coloring. And understand that what they did is they would strike prints from the negative and then make a stencil and hand color every frame of every print. Extremely labor intensive. Let's take a look.
The Pathé color films used a stencil color process involving an assembly line of women at the Pathé factory in Vincennes. Other countries had their own systems. Italy was able to achieve this high standard with hand coloring before adopting a process similar to Pathé's.
All right, so as you can see, hand stenciling was a very labor-intensive, aka costly, process. So it's very likely that in some movies they would just have certain scenes that were hand stenciled, or certain elements like, I know we didn't see this version of the Great Train Robbery, but in other versions you can see where when they shoot the guns it's yellow, the smoke. So, and again, they use women and children, and once children labor laws started becoming effective, that killed part of their workforce. But again, a very, very costly process. And then came two-strip Technicolor, and again, very expensive, because now you're not just running one strip of film through the camera, you're running two. And it used a prism beam splitter. You had two strips of black and white film simultaneously being photographed, one behind a red filter, the other behind a green filter. Well, not that many movies were made in two-strip Technicolor. One, it was expensive, and two, the reproduction of the color wasn't all that great. Well, the first movie in two-strip Technicolor was The Gulf Between, the picture on the left in 1917, and you can see it's not that great. Let's take a look at this clip that was done in two-strip Technicolor. It's called The Toll of the Sea. And whenever I watch this, I just think of Christmas. All right, so well, better perhaps than black and white, and of course audiences of the day are not that sophisticated, but not worth the money. What was worth the money was three-strip Technicolor. And if you look at the picture on the right, you can see in the camera there are three spools to run three strips of black and white film through the camera. This time it went behind a red, green, and the addition of a blue filter. And the first feature film to be released in live action, live people, was Becky Sharp, which was released in 1935 by RKO. But again, an even more costly process. Now you're using three strips of film, and what they would do is composite the film at the laboratory, and consequently, they pick and chose which projects got made in color. Now, keep in mind, TV isn't around yet, so they can still get away with showing black and white movies in the theater, because all they have to compete with is radio. But again, they pick and choose what projects will be made in Technicolor. And the first three-strip Technicolor animated short by Disney was Flowers and Trees. Well, not just by Disney, but of all time. And the first three-strip color animation feature was Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. And I know we have all kinds of newfangled methods of doing animation these days, but take a look at this clip and tell me if it just doesn't take your breath away. It does mine.
Well, It's a girl. She's mighty pretty.
She's beautiful, just like a angel.
Angel. She's a female. And all females is poison. They're full of wicked wiles.
What are wicked wiles?
I don't know, but I'm agin 'em. What's wrong? Wake her up. Oh, let her wake up. She don't belong here nohow. Look out.
She's moving.
She's waking up.
What do we do?
Hi.
Oh, dear. I wonder if the children are... Oh! Why, you're little man.
All right, so I don't know about you, but it just warms the cockles of my heart seeing that clip. But again, 3-strip color animation feature, the first Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. And what eventually cemented the success of color film, color movies, was the single strip color negative, which Eastman Kodak made. And this had been around for a while, actually. Since the 30s, both Agfa and Eastman Kodak had single strip color negative in both 16 millimeter and 8 millimeter formats, but those were considered amateur formats. And even though Technicolor responded with the monopack, a 35 millimeter version, this was only used for location shooting. And when I mean location shooting, I mean like newsreel footage. The higher grain was deemed unsuitable for feature film work. And really, it wasn't until the 50s that they released and kept improving upon the single strip color negative. And think about what else is happening at that time. TV's coming, and a lot of homes are starting to have TVs. And again, think of back in that time, if you could stay home and watch a black and white image for free, or go watch a black and white image in a movie theater where you have to buy food and admission and parking and a babysitter, on and on and on, I'd be staying home. So they had to compete with television. So the invention of the single strip color negative increased the production of color films, because it made it less expensive and more viable, and they would do more and more projects in color. And if you've ever seen an older color movie that has sort of a pinkish cast to it, it's called Magenta Vision. The dyes of those first color films, single color negative films, just really didn't hold up very well. And this concludes Lecture 3, Part 3 of 4.